Welcome to another video here for Unit 1. This video is going to go through how to round sig figs. But before we can get into rounding sig figs, I thought we should go through a basic review of just rounding rules and some example problems. So I got 3 little example problems and our rules up on the slide that you're taking a look at now. So let's take a look at our examples and kind of use these rules and learn these as we go along. In our first example, we have the number 7,298. They're asking us to round this to the hundredths place. So let's go take a look. This is my ones, here's my tens, and here's my hundredths place. So the 2 is in the hundredths place. So this is the number that I'm either going to change or keep the same. Now, what we want to do is we want to actually take a look at the number to the right of that 2. So we want to take a look at that number to the right. The number to the right of the 2 is a 9. Now, this is going to tell us if my number is 5 or greater, I actually want to round that 2 up and everything else will become a 0. Let's just write this off to the side here. 7,298, rounding to the hundredths place, so I'm rounding the 2. The number to the right is a 9, so it's greater than 5. So this 2 is actually going to be rounded up. It's going to go higher. It's going to become a 3. So the 2 becomes a 3, and everything after that becomes a 0. So 7,298 rounded to the hundredths place is 7,300. Let's take a look at another example. 345, they want me to round it to the tens place. So here's my ones, here's my tens place, right here where the 4 is. I'm going to take a look at the number to the right, which is a 5. My rule states if it's 5 or greater, then I want to round up and everything else becomes 0. So 345, rounding to the tens place, right there. I have a 5, I'm going to round up. That means that my 4 is going to become a 5. And like the rule states, everything else after becomes a 0. So 345 rounded to the tens place becomes 350. Let's take a look at our last review problem, then get into the sig fig problems. 31,299. They want to round this to the thousands place. Here's my ones, tens, hundreds, and the 1 here is actually in the thousands place. So this is the number I'm looking at. Looking at the number to the right of this, it's a 2. So right now I have 31,299. I want to round the thousands place, which is where the 1 is. I have this to the right, the 2 is to the right. This is 4 or less, so that means that my number is going to remain the same and everything else is going to become a 0. So how do I do that? Well, my 1 remains the same, and then everything else, the 2 and the other 2 nines, are actually become zeros. So 31,299 rounded to the thousands place is actually 31,000. Now that we have a little review with rounding and some of our rules, let's take a look at how to properly round sig figs. Really the only difference with these problems is instead of it telling you that you're going to round to a specific place, it's going to tell you to round to a specific number of significant figures. We're going to follow our exact same rules that we had before, but when we're done rounding, we want to check our answer to make sure that it has the appropriate number of sig figs that they requested. Let's take a look. So in this example, I'm starting out with 98.23. They're asking me to round this to 3 sig figs. This is how I execute these problems. What I do is I look at the number that they want me to round to, which is 3, and I underline that number of digits. So I've underlined the first 3 digits in my answer. Now, just like before, I'm going to take a look at the number just to the right, which is a 3. Now I'm going to use the information that we have from our previous rounding examples to kind of do this. My 3 is 4 or less. That means that everything else is going to remain the same, and the other ones will become a 0. So let's kind of write this up down below. 98.2, I want that 2 to remain the same because my number next to this, to the right, is 3, so it's less than 4 or less. And we want to drop everything else to become a 0. So my 3 now becomes a 0. So looking at my answer after rounding, and this is just how we would have done this, just through regular rounding, I have 98.20. What I want to do is before I move on to the next problem, I want to check to make sure that my answer has the appropriate number of sig figs. They requested that I have 3 sig figs in my answer. Let's take a look at what our rounded answer actually has for significant figures. This requires us to remember our significant figure rules that we had before, the Atlantic Pacific rule that we saw in the last video. So what I want to do is check for a decimal. I have a decimal. It's located right there. Now, because I have a decimal, I'm going to start from the Pacific side of this number and move across from the left to the right. I'm going to move till I hit the first non-zero number. That number and every number after that is going to be significant. The first number that I hit is 9. That means that that is not 0. That means this number and every number after this is significant. So the way that I currently have my answer written, I have 4 sig figs. Wait a second. They want me to round this to 3 sig figs. So what do I have to do? Well, I have to take one more step. My answer has 4 sig figs. 98.20 has 4 sig figs. What do I need to do? I just need to drop off one of those zeros to maintain the value of the number, but also reduce it to the appropriate number of sig figs that they're asking. So my answer is 98.2 because now if my decimal is here and I count from the left, the 9 and every number after that is significant, and I only have 3 sig figs. So 98.2 is my answer for rounding 98.23 to 3 sig figs. Let's take a look at another example. In this one, we're starting with the number 582.459, and they're asking us to round to 4 sig figs. So I'm going to underline the first 4 numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this number right here is the one that I'm going to take a look at. Let's take a look at the one to the right of this to figure out if that number is going to change or not. That number is a 5 because it's 5 or greater. That means I'm going to take that 4 and round it up, and everything else is going to become 0. Let's write it underneath. 582.459. I'm looking at this 4 because I have the 5. Let's round this up. So what really happens here is that this 4 becomes a 5 because I want to round up, and the 5 and the 9s actually become zeros. So that's how my number actually rounds up. 582.500 like we have there. Now we got to check to make sure that our answer actually has the appropriate number of sig figs. So we got to again remember those rules. My decimal is present. There it is. That means I'm starting from the Pacific side, the left side here. I'm moving across this to count the number of sig figs from my first non-zero number. First number that hits non-zero. That means that this whole thing here, every number in there is significant, meaning I have 6 sig figs. I need to take a look. We need to change this because my answer is only supposed to have 4 sig figs. So what do I need to do? Well, I need to take the value that I had, 582.500, and adjust this so that my answer has only 4 sig figs. So what I want to do is take a look at these zeros and just drop one off there. That gives me 5 sig figs, and if I drop another 0 off, that brings it down to 4 sig figs. Because my decimal is present, I'm coming from this side of the number. That 5 and every number after that is significant, so I only have 4 numbers there. My answer is 582.5. Take a look at another example. In this one right here, I have 343,621, and they're asking me to round this to 5 sig figs, or significant figures. Notice I didn't write the comma here, right? The reason why is because I don't want to get that confused with the decimal. I want to underline the first 5 sig figs, or the first 5 digits, I should say, and see how I'm going to round this. The number to the right of the 5th digit is a 1. That means that it's 4 or less. That means that my number is going to remain the same. The 5th digit is going to remain the same, and everything else is going to become a 0. Pretty simple. So 343.602, the 2 remains the same because the number to the right is 4 or less, but that 1 needs to get dropped down to a 0, and there's my answer. Now we want to double check and make sure that we have the appropriate number of sig figs in our answer. Now if you look at this example, there is not a decimal present. That means I'm actually going to start from the right side, the Atlantic side from this number, because the decimal is absent. I'm going to go past this first 0 here until I hit the first non-zero number, which is actually a 2. That number and every number after that is significant. So the 2, the 6, the 3, the 4, and this 3 are all significant. And that leaves me with actually 5 sig figs. Comparing to what we want, to what we got, that's the number I want. That means I'm all done. I don't have to drop anything off on this one because my answer already has the desired number of sig figs that they're looking for. Let's take a look at two more examples. In this one I have 219.15. I want to round this down to 2 sig figs. I'm only underlining the first two digits. We're going to take a look at the third digit, the one just to the right of that second digit. That number is a 9. It's 5 or greater. That means that my second digit is going to be rounded up and everything else is going to become a 0. So 2, my second digit, which was a 1, is going to be rounded up to a 2. The 9 and every number after that's going to become a 0. So that's how I would round this answer just the way it is normally. We need to now check to make sure that our answer has the appropriate number of sig figs. When looking at this one here, I do have a decimal present. So the way that I currently wrote my rounded answer, I have a decimal present. Because a decimal is present, I need to start from the Pacific side, the left side. I go across this till I hit the first non-zero number, which is a 2. That number and every number after that is going to be significant. So this 2 and every number after that is significant. So the way that I currently have this written, I have 6 sig figs. That's a problem because they only want me to have 2 sig figs. So what do I need to do? Well, let's take a look. I had 220.00 as my answer. I need to drop off some of these zeros to get my sig figs to 2 where they're asking. If I drop off one of these, I now have 1, 2, 3, 4 sig figs. If I drop off another one, I'm currently down to 3 sig figs. Notice that I say I have 3 sig figs. Because this decimal is still here, I'm still starting from the left side and that 0 is still significant. If I drop this 0 off, however, it changes the way that I count. Because I no longer have a 0, I'm actually going to count from the right side, the Atlantic side, and I go past that 0, so they only have 2 sig figs. So my rounded answer with the appropriate number of sig figs being 2 is 220. Last one. I have 3,980 as my number. They're asking us to round this to only 1 sig fig. It means I'm only going to underline one digit. I'm going to look at the one just to the right of it, which is a 9. That means that that digit's going to get rounded up and everything else will become a 0. So my 3 is going to get rounded up to a 4 and everything after this becomes a 0. Now I want to just double check to make sure that I have my answer, right? They asked me to make sure that I rounded to 1 sig fig. My answer is 4,000. I don't have a decimal present. Because I don't have a decimal present, I'm going to be coming from the right side of the number, the Atlantic side of the number. I'm going past all of these zeros till I hit the first non-zero number, which is the 4. So my answer of 4,000 has only 1 sig fig, and that's what they're looking for. So 4,000 is my answer, rounded to 1 sig fig. Hopefully you guys found this video useful. As always, if you have any questions, ask in class, ask a friend, post something on our Moodle website. Get the help you guys need to get the grade that you guys want. Best of luck. Keep me in the loop here as far as your problems are concerned. All right, take care.